Good evening and welcome to the Council Budget Meeting for Wednesday, January 22nd, 2024. Please rise for the playing of the National Anthem and a moment of reflection.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
I will look to Councillor McPherson to read the land acknowledgement.
The land on which Council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many Indigenous peoples made up of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement should remind us of our responsibility to ensure the Dish, the territories on which we live and work, is never emptied, and that we take care of the land and its inhabitants in a way that ensures its future sustainability.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Number one on the agenda is the Chair's report. I have a very brief Chair's report. I just want to remind Council and the public that under the new process that we have with the new legislation of the mayor's strong mayor powers, there was a deadline before tonight for amendments to the budget to be submitted, and we're reviewing those today. And there is a second chance, a second deadline, which is this Wednesday at 4 p.m. firm. So any amendments further amendments that we haven't seen that need to be reviewed would have to be into the clerk's office no later than 4 p.m. this Wednesday. The other thing I wanted to say is we have a couple of delegates and speakers. Just to remind you that you have 5 minutes to speak, and we timed that, and we're very strict about it. So having said that, I will look to the clerk for the adoption of the agenda.
There are no amendments to the agenda this evening, but we do have a late request to add a delegate to the agenda, Nicholas Picard. Nicholas wishes to speak to item 11.1, which is the amendment regarding forestry services. To add a late delegate to the agenda requires a vote 2/3 in favor to add the delegate.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Can I have someone make a motion to add him to the agenda? So Councillor Townsend, and seconded by Councillor McPherson. All in favor, a show of hands. Opposed? Okay, so that's carried. So Mr. Nicholas Picard has been added to the agenda for later on. So we'll look again to the Deputy Clerk to go over correspondence and other items on the agenda.
So the following items of additional correspondence have been placed in Council's Sugar Sync folder for this evening. A letter from the Niagara Folk Arts Festival regarding its presentation to City Council from the meeting of January 15, 2024. A confidential appendix from staff as referenced in item 5.1 sub-item 4, which is the memo from staff regarding budget amendment item 11.1 service delivery for forestry services. Item 3, a letter from Alan McKay regarding City Council budget agenda. And item 4, a letter from the St. Catharines Downtown Association regarding request for enhanced waste management downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Clerk. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Councilor Miller, seconded. Councilor Dodge, all in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the minutes. There are none. The minutes from the council budget meeting of January 10th will be approved at a future regular council meeting. Number 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councilor Kushner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a conflict of interest on 11.21. That's a motion with respect to patios.
Thank you, Councilor Kushner. And just a reminder that councilors are required to submit written statements of declarations via the online form. So number 5, we will need a motion to move consent reports. So the motion that we need is that council approve the consent agenda, save and accept those items brought forward for discussion. Can I have a mover? So Councilor Williamson, and no seconder required. So I will look to the clerk to read the list of consent reports and call the recorded vote.
So there's only one report on the consent agenda this evening. That is Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Council Correspondence. And just as a note for the councilors, that report just had the memorandums for information regarding some of the amendments this evening. You can still reference the memos and talk to them during the applicable items on the agenda this evening as well. Councilor Williamson.
Yes.
Councilor Dodge.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Kushner. Yes. Councilor Lindell.
Yes.
Councilor McPherson. Yes. Councilor Miller.
Yes.
Councilor Phillips. Yes. Councilor Ratzlaff. Yes. Councilor Stevens. Yes. Councilor Townsend. Yes. And Chair Garcia.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, we will move to number 8, delegations. Council will now hear a delegation from Lindsay Taylor. Prior to discussing 11.1, the budget amendment regarding service delivery for forestry services, Council will also hear a delegation from Peter Russell. And as we just learned, there is another delegate as well. So reminder again that presenters have 5 minutes to present. So I will now call on Lindsay Taylor to present in person.
It's this button that says mic, right? It's on? Okay, cool. Maybe I'll just, don't touch anything? How do I make it go up? I've never had to do that before. Thank you. Is that good? Thank you. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Matsisco, council members, and esteemed community members. Throughout this budget period, our community has been having some tough and powerful conversations, especially surrounding sustainable tax increases while maximizing our investments. Essentially, we've all been trying to get the biggest bang for our buck with our tax dollars. Tonight, I will address a topic often swept under the rug, no pun intended, waste management. Within the correspondence I've shared, you'll find insights to the challenges we see with public bins and a set of alternatives proposed by the Downtown Association's Streetscape and Sustainability Working Group. As we craft a sustainable model for downtown infrastructure, there are 2 attainable wins within this multi-year budget. Firstly, adding multi-use residential for large item pickup to our contract would make large item disposal accessible for residents who live in these building types. Currently, residents looking to do the right thing with their large items are forced to use alternative means of disposal for large items, which ultimately results in these items being left curbside. This poses another burden on our city and makes sections of sidewalks inaccessible. Our downtown team, doing their due diligence and keeping our streets clean, will remove this waste, but it will often require larger equipment and takes a lot of time. Providing residents who live in multi-use residential buildings with the option for large item pickup would certainly save the city time and money. Secondly, windblown waste and litter, particularly cigarette butts, present a persistent challenge. These discarded items can easily make it into our natural systems, posing risks to wildlife and the health of our environment. Traditionally, we use waste pickers or brooms and dustpans to remove the cigarette butts when we do community cleanups from the street. But through recent conversations with dedicated downtown staff, we've been advised that an electric vacuum would make street cleaning more efficient and effective. It was our vision to have a temporary seasonal student be brought on through grants such as Canada Summer Jobs or Eco Canada in the summer to help with the downtown team with their sidewalk cleaning, another easy and effective win for our city. At the end of the day, everyone who visits downtown wants to enjoy their experience, and a key part of that is keeping our sidewalks clear and navigable. Should a council member be interested in adding one or both of these amendments to the budget, I would encourage you to refer to Table 2 in our correspondence letter to determine the feasibility of these requests. On a final note, when it comes to gathering information, the Downtown Association is willing to work with staff to provide the input, such as I've shared tonight, from our members and local residents. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Do any councilors have questions of the presenter? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Oh, sorry, Councilor Ratliff.
Right. Thank you, Chair, through you. I just noticed that in our on our agenda we have an amendment that talks about another garbage truck, and I'm curious exactly what the purpose of that truck is. But I'm wondering, this vacuum that you mentioned, can you just go in a little bit more detail about what it is and what types of objects it will pick up? Just because I'm wondering how similar it is to this other truck, and if they can serve dual purpose.
That's a good question. Of course, I would turn that back to staff completely to have an answer. However, I can give you a brief description of what it looks like and how it works. So essentially, it's a 4-wheeled vacuum that would follow the attendant maintenance worker down the street. They would wear a backpack which would have a signal that would Bluetooth broadcast to the vacuum so it could be directed easily down the sidewalk, leaving 2 hands free, which is another huge bonus. And it would be able to pick up our cigarette butts and small litter that I mentioned in my delegation, but the capacity from what I'm told is that it can pick up a half-filled water bottle. So,
All right, so this is something that's much more portable than a vehicle.
Much more portable than a
because
vehicle.
I've seen in some cities where it is a vehicle with like a vacuum on the end and you move it around like this. But anyways.
Right. But this would allow us to get into areas that you would not be able to access with the
Right.
vehicle.
The other question is the large item pickup. I was just flipping through your delegation here. I'm just curious, what conversations have you had with the region about that issue?
So we are very fortunate that through our Streetscape and Sustainability Committee to have Peter DiPietro on that. And he has advised that particular multi-use residential buildings downtown cannot access the large item pickup because of the contract with Miller Waste. So we are having those discussions. They're also the ones that advised for us, as you'll see in Table 2, to look into the updated pricing for large item pickup through the Miller Waste contract. So they're aware of the interest that we have and are active members of our working group.
And then just one other question. When we went to picking up garbage every 2 weeks, it's difficult for families and individuals who are living in smaller spaces to store their garbage for that extra week. And so I think one of the things that we saw was a lot of this dumping, or more dumping than there was before. And I'm just curious, through conversations that I've had with different people, are you at all worried that, you know, these covered bins, they look great, and I do really support them, but what's stopping someone from just leaving their bag beside that bin, right? Like here in one of the pictures you have here, there's a bag right beside the bin. Like, I'm just wondering how, if that's a concern or something that you've thought about.
So maybe I'll take 2 steps back to take a few steps forward, if that's okay, as I like to do. So currently, the city of Guelph is undergoing a study through staff on public waste infrastructure on the within the streetscape, and also waste management systems from inside the businesses all the way to the waste depots. So that's really giving them the opportunity to investigate some of those issues that you're speaking to. I think when it comes to this particular issue with large item pickup, it's giving the people that want to do the right thing the opportunity to do so.
No, super helpful, thanks. Garbage is an issue downtown for sure. We hear it a lot from business owners and residents alike, and so finding any solutions would be great. So
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And as I mentioned, the Downtown Association is more than willing to be a partner in gathering that information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ratliff. We will now hear from Councilor Stevens.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair, to the presenter. A question. Would you have not discussed this with our staff prior to coming to a meeting like this so late in the budget process? I don't see why we're talking about this now, where to me, I feel like you should have talked to staff, and staff could have decided and put that in their budgets then, instead of why you're requesting this now. Why so late in the game?
Well, these conversations have been ongoing downtown for some time. I can certainly speak to my experience sitting on the Streetscape and Sustainability Committee since 2022, that we've been having these conversations and finding the best avenue to have our voices heard. It just came to our attention that this could be an avenue for our advocacy, and we took advantage of that opportunity.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Stevens. Any other questions of the presenter? Seeing none, just for clarification, thank you, Ms. Taylor. We heard from Ms. Taylor now because her presentation delegation relates to the budget overall, not a specific amendment like we will hear the other 2 presenters regarding 11.1 later. So, any other questions? No, seeing none. Can I get a councilor to move the motion to receive the delegation? Councilor McPherson, can I get a seconder? Councilor Ratliff, all in favor? That's carried. We will move to number 9, which is water and wastewater budget amendments. And please keep in mind, for those of you in the gallery or watching at home, that there are 3 budgets that we're looking at. There is the water and wastewater, there is the capital budget, and then there is the operating budget. So 9 was water and wastewater budget amendments, and there are none. So number 10 is capital budget amendments, and we have one, which is 10.1, capital and operating budget amendment 1, addition of a garbage packer truck to municipal fleet. So moving the motion, I have Councilor Dodge, and can I have a seconder? Councilor Williamson. So the motion should be on the screen. So Councilor Dodge, would you like to speak to that first or wait or? Okay, so do any other councilors want to speak to that motion? Councilor Williamson? Oh, sorry, I have Councilor Townsend first.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, my question is in regards to the region deals with garbage pickup. I'm just curious if there is any system set up right now where the region does have a responsibility to do more frequent garbage pickups when it comes to summer times, you know, at Sunset Beach, Lakeside Beach. I'm just wondering if staff can comment on that.
Thank you, Councilor Townsend. I will look to Director Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, the service levels by the region are set yearly, basically year-round. We do have some discussions with the region on a fairly regular basis about contractual improvements, but at this point, that's not included in the service level in our waste levy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Townsend. I will now look to Councilor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councilor Townsend's point that really it should be the region that's picking up this service and covering our waste management. But the reality has been for over at least a couple decades that every time there's an event or there's a busy weekend at Sunset Beach, I still call it Municipal Beach, or at Lakeside Beach in Port Dalhousie, or just in any focal points, we were left with overflowing garbage cans and a big mess. So it's just something that can't continue to go on. So this is hopefully a way that will address it. So hopefully we can move forward with this and eliminate this ongoing problem of having ugly garbage cans overflowing. And you know, it's one of these things where we talk about if we want to have draw people to our city and have good quality of life for local residents, there's certain investments that we need to make, and I think this is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Williamson. I have Councilor Phillips next.
In the same vein as what Councilor Williamson just said, also when we have something like Rib Fest or Grape and Wine Festival, we can have immediate pickup the next day or during the festival if needed. So on a whole, it's going to make the city a lot cleaner. Monday morning pickups at the beaches or on the weekends if there's festivals. It seems like a large price to pay right now, but the unit itself would last for a long time. It's not going to be on the street every day. So definitely support it.
Thank you, Councilor Phillips, and I will move to Councilor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I've got just a question or clarification. I'm not sure what it is. Is this because of the way the new budget process is, like to a councillor asking for a piece of equipment as opposed to staff? I don't understand why it came through a councillor and not a request from a staff like that. Is that because of the new budget process or what?
Thank you. I'm not sure who can answer that. CAO Oaks?
There we go. Thanks. Sorry. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. It's part of the new process, so the Strong Mayor legislation. This is the new piece where councillors can bring amendments forward that the mayor will then either choose to veto or accept into the budget.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Stevens. I will look to Councilor Ratliff.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just a few questions. Is this something that like staff has done a report on, or is there any documentation on whether or not this truck would actually help with these events, or these events? Like I can see the problem, but is this something that we've identified as the solution to the problem?
Thank you. Director Smith, would you like to answer that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll start, and I may end up turning some of it over to Dan, but we envisioned this at the start to assist mainly in the summer with sports fields and beaches. So we do collect garbage now in the summer. We use a regular small truck to do it. We go around to places that the region cannot access. So a small packer truck would be able to access that. The advantage of the Packard truck is the added capacity, because it is a Packard truck. You compress the garbage when you pick it up, and you move forward. With a regular truck, you're going and emptying that vehicle a lot more times than you would with the compaction that's available in the Packard truck. With respect to the other aspects of the potential use for this vehicle, I note that there's a report request on the 29th agenda. Oh, is it tonight? To deal with further outlining potential uses for this vehicle.
All right, that's helpful. In terms of those further uses, like how would it apply? Because we just heard a presentation on garbage downtown, and would it apply at all to those issues?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point, I couldn't speak to whether it would apply to those issues or not. It would not be used for heavy pickup, because it wouldn't be feasible for that. And it's really not applicable with litter pickup, as that's obviously a smaller piece of machinery or hand forces that deal with that. Again, through the report, we were contemplating looking if there's any particular use for the downtown core to assist with that situation.
All right, thanks, that's helpful. Just one last question. So when we were writing these reports or thinking about it, like we thought specifically about whether or not this would creep into the garbage pickup that the region's already supposed to be doing. Like this is just things that the region can't do or specific to city events. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's the anticipated use right now. I will again note that the budget report the report that is requested talks about alternative delivery models for those expansion of services. So we would look to work either with the region or with our own forces to see which is the most economically feasible to move forward if council wishes to enhance those services.
All right, thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Ratliff, and I will look to Councilor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to either the CAO or the Director of Municipal Works. So we had a speaker, we had Kevin Townsend or Councillor Townsend talk about the region taking care of parking, and Councillor Ratzliff, or parking, sorry, garbage. Can we make part of this report to perhaps direct the CAO to have a discussion with the region on increasing our services, since we're the largest municipality, and perhaps you could negotiate with some enhanced services? Or part of this motion, like a direction? Yeah. It's just that we keep talking, like it's a reoccurring theme, right? And we're gonna spend money, there's all kinds of different things that are happening with the garbage, so.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I assume you're referencing the report request that's coming forward. To add that into it, we could definitely put that into the report review, if that's what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's 13.1 coming up, Councilor, so if you can add it then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors have questions? Seeing none, I have Councilor Dodge moving the motion, and I believe Councilor Williamson seconded it? Yes? So the motion is on the screen, and if there are no other questions, I will look to the Deputy Clerk for a recorded vote.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yeah, yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Chair Garcia.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay. So we will now move to 11, which is operating budget amendments, and we do have a few there because, of course, the operating budget is the one that affects us most directly. So prior to discussing a motion on 11.1, which is an operating budget amendment number 1, service delivery for forestry services, we will hear a presentation from Peter Russell and then Nicholas Picard. But Peter Russell, I now call on him to present in person, please. Please go ahead, Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Chair, Council, Gallery. I'm here tonight. Let me just start with my notes and we'll go. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Peter Russell's my name. I'm a 50-year taxpayer of St. Catharines. I make a full disclosure here. My son is a 20-year member of the city arborist crew. Everything I'm going to speak about tonight is my own observations. And I'm a member of the Coalition for Better St. Catharines. And we're always looking for new members of the St. Catharines Coalition. If everybody wants to join us, we welcome you. So my opinions are mine alone. I experience walking with my dog in my downtown neighborhood. And the reason I'm here doing this, somebody sent me the director's memorandum, and I looked at it and I said, that's just not the way I see St. Catharines in this world. So,
Mr. Russell, please speak more directly into the microphone.
I'm sorry, I didn't even see it.
Thank you.
So, work orders accomplishments. Say the contractors do more work and do better and faster work. So my observation was, I seen a contractor on Beach Street on one of my walks, took a tree down to a 12-foot butt. He did that in one day. City had to come back and remove that butt. I watched another time, different months or whatever. City arborist on Louisa took down a tree, total removal, and just after lunch was gone. There's quite a difference in what's going on there. I've seen a contractor on my walk on York Street, 3 people sitting in a truck. When I walked by, on my way home, maybe a half an hour later, truck was still there, 3 people sitting in that truck. So I got to ask, who were they working for? Or who were they not working for? That's a problem. Who's paying them to sit in it? Is it the city's taxes? Are they working for the region? Are they working for Hydro? These trucks need to be identified with signs. The director says crews drive around the city before reporting to a job, tracked by GPS. If that's the case, why were they not written up then and there? If it was during COVID, maybe they were looking for a washroom, as most places during COVID were not open, and the self-cleaning toilet was not in service yet. Road work on Woodland Avenue damaged some routes. City crews were told to cut down the damaged trees, the damaged roots. So there were 70-foot trees that had damaged roots. Neighbors stopped this, I think, after we lost 3 big trees. They should not have left the trees, they should have left the trees and seen in years to come whether they need to be removed. Memorandum says challenges ensuring the availability of specific services like forestry. That's because this department has decimated and not replaced the city arborists. With vacation and sick time, this gives a chance to bring contractors in at an apparently significant less cost. If the city is truly trying to lower costs in taxes, why did they only scrutinize the forestry department? This goes to show the director only wanted to eliminate arborists and replace with contractors. Who would this benefit? And picking only one department is discrimination. Most cities in this area are hiring arborists. Our city seems to be wanting to get rid of arborists. I don't have the answer to that. Maybe somebody does. So I have a question. Am I allowed to ask a question?
You ask a question, you mean?
Can I ask a question?
You mean on staff?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I don't
All
believe
right.
so.
And that concludes my presentation.
Are you finished, Mr. Russell?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the presenter, first of all? Councilor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the presenter for your remarks. Can you tell me what the question was that you would like to ask?
Well, out of the arborist budget, there's two folks on the sunshine list that were management in the forestry division. I'd like to know where their pay is going to. Does that come out of the forestry budget?
I can't answer that question. I just want to know what your question was.
Well, that was my question.
We can direct that to staff, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Dodge. I have Councilor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation today. I appreciate you coming in and sharing your perspective. At a time where municipalities are facing unprecedented property tax increases, I know we certainly had one that was higher than normal last year. Is there anything that if you looked at our budget that you feel should be cut out in order to bring down that tax increase? Just any ideas or some solutions to help offset any increases that are potentially on the horizon?
Well, you caught me a little off guard there, but yeah, if you're going to scrutinize a particular department, scrutinize every department. I'm sure where I worked at Thompson Products. They had a cost improvement program. If I put in an improvement, they gave me a coupon for Canadian Tire, sometimes Blues Jays tickets. The company said after the first year, they saved millions of dollars. So they continue this on. I've been out of there a while, so I don't know whether they still do that. So that's a simple way without losing any jobs. You can't say my boss did this, my boss did that. It was a company, millions and millions of dollars every year. So that way, or just go through your whole department and say, you know what, can you save some money? Can you save some money? That's a hands-on way to get your budget down, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Townsend. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Russell, and we will receive the presentation after Mr. Picard speaks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
So I will now call on Nicholas Picard to present in person. Go ahead, Mr. Picard.
Sorry, public speaking is not my forte, so I do apologize now. Thank you very much, Mayor and councilors, for letting me speak tonight. My name is Nicholas Picard. I'm an arborist of 25 years. I've been living in the city for 26 years. My background and experience, I've worked for 2 different municipalities. I've worked for a number of small companies. I've worked for the 2 largest companies in North America for arborists. And now I have a small business that I operate here in St. Catharines, along in the Niagara region, and add a little bit more. I'm not here to speak on whether forestry should be saved or not be saved. I'm here to speak on solely on a couple of comments that I was kind of disappointed in the last budget meeting from a couple of the delegates. A couple of misconceptions, in my opinion. For one, the qualifications, one of the comments was that contractors just leave like, one arborist on staff, and then they just put like whoever they can that, might not have as much qualifications. Me being a small business owner, I employ 2 staff members. My one member is 11 years experience. He's proficient in hydro. He has hydro proficiency, work protection code, working at heights, tree rescue, as well as all the other required courses and certificates that you need to be able to work at City of St. Catharines. My second employee is 16 years of service. Forestry Tech diploma from Fleming. Parks and Forestry diploma from Fleming. Urban Forestry from Humber, arborist. ISA certified arborist. Ontario certified arborist 44A, and ISA tree risk assessor. Also, all the other small little other courses that you might need to, or that you do need to be here, to work here at the City of St. Catharines. I also have ISA certified arborist. I am also an ISA tree risk assessor, as well as an Ontario utility arborist 44B, as well as all the extra, certificates that you might need to, or that you do need to work here. So, just to clarify that some of the, contractors that come in here that work for your city, we're not all, we are qualified. My company is very qualified, just so you guys understand and the public understands as well. One other point I wanted to make was the quality of work. I hold my staff to standards, as well as hold themselves to good standards here. Being a resident of St. Catharines, I understand I have a lot of passion for goes into the tree work that I do and that I hold my staff to. I am very passionate about the tree canopy here. I understand and notice that it's dwindling, our large canopy. For example, if you guys are long residents here, you understand like Glenridge and Westchester, how the big, beautiful trees there, understandably somewhere had to come down for certain reasons, and then road expansion. So, you watching those canopies and other canopies around the city is kind of, but, we do, very passionate about, what standards we have. So, as a contractor, the comments were made about, they just come in and, cut whatever they want, and they don't give a, sorry, I can't say that, about the city. That's not, my little company and what we do here. So I'm not going to speak on other contractors, but, there are other good contractors here as well. Yeah, so, wow. 5 minutes flies quick. My last point I wanted to touch on is quotas. We do not work on a quota system here in City of St. Catharines. It's an hourly contract, which allows us to do safe production here. So it's the more trees that there was a comment that the more trees that we take down, the more money we make. That's just simply not true. We like to work on the safe production, as I mentioned. We also held the standards, the same standards that you guys are, City Forestry are held to. We're inspected weekly, at least weekly, and we are, our work gets audited. 10 seconds left. One thing I do want to say, though, I do know personal people on the staff of Forestry. You guys have great staff here, all around. Forestry workers are good, but again, I'm not here to go one way or another on. I just wanted to let you guys know that not all contractors are horrible, and we are passionate about stuff. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Picard. Please stay for any questions, and I have Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation and coming in today and sharing some perspective from your business side of things. Really appreciate that. I guess one of the questions that I have for you, and it's been talked about around over the last few weeks, is that if and when other municipalities have outsourced their arborist departments or forestry, there's been an appetite for the first couple of years of costs to be aligned with what they were once spending. Come along years 3, 4, 5, 6, through businesses or through outsourcing, those costs have quadrupled. And I can confirm this with conversations with colleagues in other municipalities outside of the Niagara region. I'm wondering if you could comment on that. I'm not sure if you have an answer to it, But it just seems to be, one colleague of mine from another municipality did say to me, be very wary about outsourcing anything. Because once you get it out of house, your municipality becomes desperate for services. And if there's one or two or a few servicing companies that can provide that service to you, they're more than willing to jack those rates up.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you can comment on that.
We don't compete with like in-house forestry staff. We compete with other contractors. So as long as you guys have a healthy amount of contractors that are qualified to bid on certain stuff, then you shouldn't have that much of a problem. That being said, the cheapest contractor is not always the best way to go. But when it comes down to it, dollars and cents and that's what it comes down to. One comment is with the city of St. Catharines, if you guys look back at, I've worked here with many different companies and now my own. You guys got pretty low rates, and do pretty well in that aspect compared to other municipalities. So, again, it's not about the forestry guys or in-house or out. It was just, just on your comment on what you made. So, and we're not competing against them. We're competing against each other, right? So.
Thank you for that, and you are correct. We do have one of the lowest rates amongst Ontario municipalities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. I will look to Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Picard. You can choose not to answer this if you don't want to, because it's a broader question, but you mentioned that we have dwindling canopy or some issues with our canopy. Is there any suggestions, a couple things you think we could be doing to improve and enhance our canopy overall? Some simple fixes, perhaps?
Again, it's probably, but that's for you guys to figure out. Like, obviously you need to plant more trees and get more trees in the ground. There was comments about getting the tree planting in, and I'm not exactly sure on how that works here in the city of St. Catharines to a T, so I really don't want to speak on it. But, you have to plant more trees. Also, planting more trees, you need to, do them like, some of the presenters spoke last week, like making sure that they're planted properly. Whether it's in-house or whether it's better quality inspection to get those trees in. So when trees come in on the truck, making sure maybe somebody to actually inspect the stock that comes in rather than just throwing trees with girdling roots. Like there's no reason why you can't say, when a contractor comes in with a whole truckload of trees saying like, we're not taking that, and that, they're not gonna do, because they're probably gonna die or be problematic in the future, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I have is with respect to the private contractors being paid by the hour. If that's the case, what is their incentive to get the work done quickly? We've heard suggestion that they goof off, and if that's the case, we're paying them. How is that system monitored?
I'm inspected. My quota, or not the quota, sorry, that's the wrong thing to say. The work orders that I get, that I do, are looked at every day when I come in and drop them off. Our work gets, like, I'm not sure about, I can't say to any other contractors, but for us, like, I get audited on the amount of work done. And in the end, there's going to be some, personal accountability for business owners as well. Again, I can't speak on the other business owners, but for myself, I like to take pride in, getting some stuff done, and, we do some pretty difficult jobs at my company and, for the city. Not that, say that the other arborists can't do, because I've worked, personally with a couple of them, and they're actually really good arborists, but, yeah, you got to get it done. And, you could say the contractors might goof off. You could say maybe city employees might goof off. We could all be doing a good job, so, it's kind of a vague.
So you're suggesting you're carefully monitored?
I believe so, yeah, in my opinion, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Any other questions of the presenter? Thank you, Mr. Picard.
Thank you.
So can I get a councillor to move the motion to receive the delegations? Councillor Phillips, and a seconder, Councillor McPherson. All in favor? Councilor Dodge, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. I'm just wondering if at all possible, someone from staff could answer Mr. Russell's question that he asked earlier, if possible.
I would look to the CAO and ask them to comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to the treasurer, but I believe the question was asking on the management side where the salaries are allocated, if they're allocated within forestry or if they're allocated within the department. So I believe we do an allocation of a portion of those salaries, but maybe have the treasurer confirm.
Director Douglas?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Budget Chair, to the councillor. With regards to management salaries here, we do, as the CAO has indicated, we do an allocation to the work that the various managers and supervisors oversee. I don't have the particulars in front of me with regards to the forestry supervisors, but if council would like, we can get that information to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Dodge. So we will now move to an amendment motion that Councilor Ratliff has. And I believe, Councilor Dodge, you wanted to second that? Yes. Okay. So the motion will be on the screen. And Councilor Ratliff, do you want to address that first or wait for other questions? Okay, so you will wait. So are there any other questions from council regarding the motion that is on the screen? Councilor Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does this, is it implicit in this that staff is prioritizing restoring forestry staff to the complement that we had hoped that had been at 9, I believe?
We'll look to Director Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, once the budget is approved, finalized, approval is the old term, I guess. Once the budget is finalized and passed through the amendment process, if this motion is passed, we will start the recruitment process immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Williamson and Director. So just some clarification for Council. So that filling those positions to the approved complement was on hold pending finalization of this amendment, or?
To you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see Councilor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, this is a question for, I guess, Municipal Works or Parks and Rec. If council decides to move forward and maintain this department and have the full complement, one of the presenters did say last week that in order for our tree plantings to be successful, there needs to be proper maintenance, which I would assume this is where our forestry department, arborists, would come into play. How will both the tree planting aspect of the Parks and Rec services and the maintenance arborists from Municipal Works, how will they be collaborating in the future? Because we clearly understood last week that there isn't really a crossover in the two departments, where we heard that there needs to be in order for these trees to grow properly.
Thank you. I will look to Director Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with respect to a proper maintenance program, I think we'll go back, if you reference the memo that I submitted to council, and talking about a proactive tree maintenance program. The current complement does not allow us to proceed down a proactive maintenance program until we have the backlog of liability issues cleaned up. That is not something that can be done in a single year, given the complement budget and resources that are included in the forestry section.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Director of Municipal Works, what complement would be required in order to maintain some of those newly planted trees? Because if we're planting trees every year and they're not being properly planted or groomed, as we heard last week from our forestry department, those trees end up just dying. So I'm wondering, what is the appropriate complement to ensure that we're actually providing the maintenance to those newly planted trees?
Director Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I will turn some of that discussion over to the manager of Green Infrastructure Operations in a second. Just to be clear, we have about a 10% mortality rate in our new plantings. That is in line with other municipalities and their planting programs. So definitely what a proactive maintenance plan does, it does a couple of things. It will help reduce that 10% mortality rate. It will also help prevent liability issues down the road. The delegates, several of them spoke to the juvenile tree trimming program, which does address some of those, the pattern in which the tree grows. I'm not an arborist or a forestry technician, so as an engineer, I'm trying to say these things, but, and that will help that tree reduce potential liabilities as it grows to a mature height. I will now turn it over to the manager of Green Infrastructure.
Sir Cooper?
Thank you. Through the chair to the councillor. As Director Smith was saying, that some of the most important years of a tree's life is when it's newly planted. So I think that more oversight in the selection process when stock comes in. I think that more money could be spent on amendments for soil. Again, it's not always about planting more trees, but it is about planting them better. And as Director Smith said, implementing a structural juvenile tree planting, tree pruning program is pretty vital, as some of those large issues that you find 10, 15, 20 years down the road can be remedied with a couple snips on a newly planted tree. But again, that is something that we're working towards as a section. But again, we don't have the staff resources at the time to get there.
Thank you for that.
Director Smith?
Through you, just to add one more thing, Mr. Chair. Now, this request, I believe, there is a report request in Q3 of this year to address that issue that was brought forward and approved at council with respect to what resources would be needed, how to better coordinate, and that would be brought forward, like I said, in Q3 of this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the director. My question was, so I understand that tree pruning is an important aspect. How many staff members would be required? Because what I'm hearing is that the complement that we're looking to bring back in would simply be to maintain what is currently existing. How many people would be required to provide that pruning, that juvenile service, which, as we know, is very important and integral to a tree's longevity?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not have that information at this moment. We would have to put that together.
Well, thank you. I guess through you, Chair, I'm asking, maybe I could ask if the mover would be open to, adding or putting some aspect into this motion that would touch on having some staff hired on to do the basics of ensuring that these trees are going to live. So I'm wondering through to Councillor Ratzel if there's maybe some wording that could be included in his ask to provide some level of staffing for that.
Thank you. I will ask the deputy clerk, would that be a report request or?
I'm thinking that just for, I guess for clarity's sake, it might be better under, and I'm just gonna take one quick second here, item 12, I believe. Item 13, which is request for information about the budgets and budget-related report requests, because if we are looking at reporting back at a later date on that number and the cost for that number, it'd be better to come back as a report request, which I think would be better handled under item 13 on this agenda, and just keep this focused on just the financial amendment to the agenda.
Councilor Townsend? Sorry, are you finished, Councilor Townsend?
No, but point of order.
Okay, so we will move to, I have Councilor Dodge first, unless you have a,
No, I gotta go.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
just that, I think what Councilor Townsend's talking about was included in my report request from budget, or from council last week. Could, maybe the director could confirm that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Yeah, I think it's hard. That's what he's saying for Q3. It's coming
Well,
back.
thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you both, and I'll go back to Councilor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, please. I certainly support this and want to see this work in-house, and I think that that's where it belongs, to have us doing our tree services. If this were to move forward and it was successful this evening, is there anything that, I mean, we've had many conversations about how we can provide this service better and things that council can do to help staff and whatnot. Is there anything that you can share with us tonight that we can do better, and by keeping it in-house and work towards to make this successful? Because part of the report says that if we pass this tonight, we'll keep it in-house, but it stays status quo. So how can we get it so that we're doing better than status quo now?
Director Smith?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think, again, referenced in the memo, there was some next steps if council wished to include this in-house service. We would continue to engage the union to deal with the productivity issues. We would also engage with the union to have discussions around some of the improvements that they suggested. The one that we are supportive of is the potential of replacing some of the arborists with trained park operators as a way to save some funds, but also it makes sense when you look at the way that a crew is put together. And then we would continue to report back to council on a regular basis of how those discussions are going.
Okay. And just for a matter of time frame, how quickly would that process start?
Through you, Mr. Chair, once the budget is finalized, it would start immediately.
Okay. Thank you. I look forward to that.
Thank you, Director. Are there any other questions? Councilor Phillips?
Thank you, Chair. To Director Smith, this could be in the budget, and I missed it. As far as summer employment for the upcoming year, how many students do you hope to employ?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're just getting that number right now.
Okay.
Okay. Well, you're getting that number. Last year, we had a problem, and the reason that we were given that some of the quality of the work wasn't there was because there just weren't enough students who applied for positions within the city. I think we had 48 jobs open and only 24 students applied, something like that. What are we doing to encourage students to apply for the city this year? Because obviously we need as many boots on the ground as we can get. So are we doing anything to, and I don't know whether this should go to Human Resources or to Mr. Smith, but something has to be done.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've done two things this year. We have gone to early recruitment dates. So we got our student recruitment out in December, early with the same as the other municipalities to try to attract students here before they get interviewed somewhere else. We have also addressed the wage gap that we had between our students in-house. So we had students that were in other departments that were actually making more than the students that were in municipal works. So we've addressed that wage gap in the budget this year. So we should have the same wage across the board for all students, which again will help attract students to the municipal works side and not just the other departments where they were going. We are continually looking at potentials of making sure that we're notified of job fairs that students are having so we can provide material for those job fairs to try again to attract people to St. Catharines.
That's great. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. And I have Councilor Miller.
Yeah, thanks. I just I had a couple questions for the director. I think the memo we got sort of outlined some significant deficiencies in staffing in the forestry section. Couldn't these be addressed by adding support rather than contracting out the area as a whole? And in particular, the memo sort of, in my view, sort of penalizes the forestry department because the workers are utilizing, the vacation time that they bargained for and we evidently agreed with, but wouldn't having that full complement again reduce a lot of the pressure, one, on the department to have enough staff members available, but also on management to have to sort of be constantly trying to count how many workers are available at any given time and fill those hours, and then it just seems like the workers could take their time off without fear of really penalty or sort of prejudice, which I do feel like this memo was a bit unfair in the sense it was saying that we didn't have enough hours available when we don't have a full complement of staff, and the staff we have are using their vacation time that they have a right to use. So could maybe, I guess my question is, wouldn't this be partially alleviated by having a full complement of staff? And perhaps what this is really saying is that we need more staff if we're not able to fill the hours that we need to assign work to?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So any comparisons that were done in the memo were done on a crew basis. So the total number of staff available did not impact the analysis. Secondly, it was not my intention in any way to penalize staff with respect to vacations or sick times. And I stated very clearly in the memo, I was not alleging any wrongdoing by staff. I was just trying to explain some of the challenges that the management staff have in place to assign work and get work done. And then finally, with respect to a full complement being able to do more work, that is correct. We would be able to do more work with a full complement. And the fact that we don't have a full complement was only put in place temporarily because we were going through this process.
I guess my question to follow up on that is, being that we're operating at 55% or whatever of the complement, were these issues, because I get what you're saying, it's on a per crew basis, but of course, morale and everything in the department will be affected by the fact that they're understaffed, and that I'm sure the workers themselves know that there's a huge backlog of work, and that's going to impact their stress level and their anxiety about their job as well. So were these issues as prevalent? Like, has the forestry department long been unable to fulfill the hours it needs to, or is this, I guess, how much is this impacted by the fact that it's 45% understaffed right now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll start off by saying that this has been going on for a significant period of time. There has been a backlog of work orders since I started with the city in 2016. That was exacerbated during COVID, because as a cost-cutting measure during COVID, we stopped doing low-risk tree work. So tree work that didn't have any liability or risk associated with it. With respect to the particular reasons why, I think I've outlined previously, the plan would be to engage the union to deal with the productivity issues that are outlined in the memo. Those productivity issues are prevalent not just in this past year.
I guess I'll say my concern, this isn't really a question, but I assume we're doing sort of questions and comments at the same time, is that if this has been going on for a long time, that this is, in my mind, my 6th year here, this is the first solution we've really seen, and the solution is a pretty drastic one. But I would think, again, that we would be looking to hire more if we have a backlog and we're not, there's more work to be done. We need more workers to do it. I would have imagined at some point that would have been brought forward as an option. My other just question specific to the memo itself and in sort of response to the amendment is the contract cost estimates that were used to sort of do the cost comparison. What are the terms and the lengths of these contracts? Because I think we've heard, when we were in here last time on budget that, and we've read those reports about outsourcing, that often the costs go up. So, are we signing, would the proposal be to sign a 3-year contract at those rates? And is there not an expectation that the cost will increase as our sort of bargaining power with private contractors goes down?
Director?
Through you, I may ask the Director of Financial Management Services to jump in here if I get way out of line, but they are yearly through our hired equipment rates that we engage the contractors. It would be the intention, if council were to approve the outsourcing, to put an RFP together for long-term contracts that would have specific clauses in that with respect to work expectations, all of the issues that have been brought forward through this process.
Director Douglas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Directors of Municipal Works has done a good job of analyzing and sharing the information with regards to our current and future process.
Okay, obviously we all know there's sort of been significant increases as sort of labor supply has gone down. So I think there are, what were we then, I suppose, basing those estimated numbers on? Are they based on our current stumping and planting, or did we go out and like, how do we come up with the figures that are in this memo?
Director Douglas?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer to our Manager of Financial Planning to provide the details with regard to the specific costs that were provided in the memo.
Thank you. Through the chair to the council, when staff did the analysis for the costing estimates, we refer to the two main contractors that the city is currently utilizing and working, and we you use the highest hourly rate and to cost out the the outsourcing model. And for the 3 years, we did build in inflationary increases as estimate.
Okay, and I guess my last financial question, sorry, thank you, is with regards to contracting out the services that we currently do in stumping and planting specifically, how have those costs changed in recent years? Like, it seems like the contracting part of our budget in this department has gone up fairly significantly in recent years. Is that fair to say? Is the amount of work we're contracting gone up, or is the cost simply gone
up? Through you, Mr. Chair. So our stumping contract hasn't had any significant increases in the last few years. Similarly to our hired equipment list, I'm not aware of any significant increases. There have been inflationary increases, of course. Some of those increases that we have seen are driven by stricter insurance requirements that the contractors now have to carry. But most of the increase would have been due to workload.
Okay. Anyway, just to sum up, I'm in favor of the proposed amendment. I think there's a real danger when we lose control of these services, both in terms of the quality of service, as has been touched on a little bit, and the accountability and the costs going up as well. I think we all saw that with waste management in the region. I'm sure that's not a road we want to go down. I think the report that I asked for last week, and we got a reply today from CUPE that had some good suggestions about how to address some of the productivity and issues between the workers and management, and I think that's a good path forward. I don't really see the need for what I would say is a pretty drastic option at this point. So certainly in support of the amendment, and hoping we can keep this in-house and keep working to improve this department for citizens and the workers alike. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Miller. Are there any other comments, questions? Councilor Ratliff?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just have three, try to make them quick comments. The first one, I just want to thank, we had a lot of engagement on this issue, and over last election, one of the things that we discussed was just the apathy, and the low voter turnout, and I think this shows that residents of St. Catharines are still really engaged, and I love to see them engaged on all issues like this. But I think one of the reasons why we had this level of engagement is because of how important the forestry is and how important our canopy is, how vital it is to all of our residents, but especially those who are more vulnerable and require the shade that trees provide and the fresh air that they provide, which is really all of us. Our canopy has a direct impact on our health, and as Councillor Miller was pointing out there, I think that there's a real danger when we allow the bidding process or profits to mitigate the care and service that provides that direct service to our health, or that direct impact on the health of our residents. The last comment I wanted to make was related to the reason why we're talking about forestry in the first place, and that's because staff or the council requested that staff find efficiencies to bring our budget to 0%. When I was a small business owner, I owned a painting business. I had a few employees. When I thought about finding efficiencies, profit tempted me to think about better ways to exploit my employees. Of course, we have many small businesses who fight against that temptation all the time, but it's really the job of a union to make sure that workers aren't exploited. And one of the reasons why you can find savings by outsourcing is because generally those contractors don't have unions. Those workers don't have unions to make sure, to hold the owners accountable that they don't succumb to the temptation to find better ways to exploit their workers. And I know many businesses in St. Catharines don't do that, but it is the union's job to fight for the rights of workers. And so I just think it's important to point that out, that this is the reason we're talking about this in the first place. We asked for it, we got it, and I guess I'm happy that we're talking about forestry, and I'm hoping we're able to use this discussion to improve our canopy, to improve the working conditions of staff, and hopefully the end product that we get at the end of the day will be better than what we started with. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Ratliff. And I would just add to that to council, please be aware that the mayor is bound by the new legislation to table his budget, and that he identified this area as one area where reports indicated that money could be saved. So we will look to the deputy clerk to call the recorded vote, and please be aware that if you look at the motion that's on the screen, so this is essentially, if this passes, it is decreasing the savings that the mayor had projected in the budget he tabled by that line, number one line there. So, Deputy Clerk?
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
And Chair Garcia.
Yes.
Carried.
So that's carried. So we will move to 11.2, budget amendment number 2, which is reduction of business license and patio fees. And that is being moved by Councilor McPherson. And do I have a seconder? Councilor Phillips. So the motion will be on the screen. And Councilor McPherson, do you want to speak to that first or wait? You will speak now? Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This amendment is, as we know, many of our small businesses are still struggling, and this is just a small opportunity and way that we can, when every dollar counts, help them offset some of their costs. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McPherson. Are there? Oh, we need, Councilor Phillips seconded. Yeah. Are there any other comments or questions from council on the amendment by Councilor McPherson? Okay. I will only say that it's a very good point that I know that certainly a lot of businesses are still struggling since COVID, and they're suffering, and anything we can do to get them back on their feet to where they used to be, that would be really helpful. So I will look to the deputy clerk to call the recorded vote.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes.
Carried.
Okay, so that's carried. So we will move to 11.3, operating budget amendment number 3, funding for neighborhood microgrants pilot project, and that's Councilor McPherson again moving that motion. And do I need a second there? Councilor Ratliff? Okay, so Councilor McPherson, do you want to speak first, or?
I spoke to it at the council meeting last week. It's just an opportunity to support the up-and-coming community groups, and with it coming out of, because it's a pilot project, it just seems to make sense to come out of the Civic Project Fund until we have assurances or we have data on the success of it.
Thank you, Councilor McPherson. It's a relatively small amount, and anything we can do to help community groups, and I always say our volunteers are the backbone of the city. So do any other councilors have any comments or questions on this amendment? Seeing none, I look to the deputy clerk to do a recorded vote.
Just waiting for voting mode to enter here. Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Harris? Not here. Councillor Kushner is also not here. Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
And Chair Garcia?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so we will move to 11.4, operating budget amendment number 4, increase Niagara Folk Arts Festival funding request for 2024 to 2026. And Councilor Miller is moving that. Can I have a seconder for it, or Councilor Ratliff? Okay, so Councilor Miller, do you want to speak to it first, or?
So this is in response to a request from Folk Arts themselves. You will recall that they're looking to sort of expand and change the dynamic of their operations in some of their festivals and become a sort of truly year-round organization. And I think that's something that we should support. We certainly see the benefit of all the work they do in the city for newcomers and citizens alike. So that's it.
Are there any other comments or questions on this? Councilor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, I'm wondering if I just get reminded as to what other municipalities are also putting into, because Niagara Folk Arts is, it's not just St. Catharines, it's across the Niagara region. I'm wondering if there's any financial contribution that's being provided by other Niagara municipalities.
Through you, Mr. Chair. This question was asked of the presenter last week, I believe, at council, and I believe that the answer that was provided to council then was that there were no other municipalities that contributed directly to the festival.
Thank you for that, and that's what I thought it was. I think I'm a little concerned with this just in regards to, I do believe that Niagara Region should be putting some money into this. It shouldn't just be solely St. Catharines all the time, continuously footing the bill on this. So, I mean, I would encourage the Niagara Folk Arts to apply for some grants through Niagara Region, or perhaps approach Niagara Region to ask for this increase, but I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will look to the Deputy Clerk to call the recorded vote.
Counselor Miller.
Yes.
Counselor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Counselor Stevens.
No.
Counselor Townsend.
No.
Counselor Williamson.
No.
Counselor Dodge.
No.
Counselor Harris.
No.
Counselor Kushner.
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Lindell.
No.
Counselor McPherson.
No.
Counselor Phillips.
Nope.
And Chair Garcia.
No.
And that's lost.
Okay. We will move to 11.5, and I will now leave the chair, and I will ask Councillor Dodge, who is the Vice Chair of the Budget Standing Committee, to take the chair so I can present the motion.
Thank you, and good evening. So we're moving on to 11.5, the operating budget amendment number 5A, reducing the city net tax levy in 2024 over 2023 to 0%, motion 1 of 3. Moving the motion, we have Councillor Garcia, and seconding Councillor Phillips. Are there any councillors? Thank you, Councillor Phillips. He'll be seconding it. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Kushner.
Thank you. I'd like to put this in some type of perspective. We do have various funds. We have the civic fund, and for summary, and I think it's important for the community to know what we have in these funds. So could we bring up what we have in the civic fund and the gapping fund and the special tax mitigation fund? What kind of monies do we have in there?
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. We're just getting a moment. Thank you. Sorry, but just wondering if Councillor Garcia, before your question gets answered, if you'd like to speak to all three before we start? I'm sorry.
Rexy, can you just open up Councillor Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to wait to speak last, but I would also like to ask the Deputy Clerk for Council to understand that I submitted one amendment with my objective being to get the city spending increase in 2024 over 2023 to 0. And there are three parts to it. So staff the clerk's office has shown it as 3 separate amendments, but when I speak, I would like to speak to all 3 of them because they are one motion. And I just wonder, I don't know if it will fit. Is it possible to have all 3 up at the same time, Deputy Clerk?
So that's, so Alexi can help with that. She can try and just grab all 3 charts and bring them up on one page. I can't guarantee that it will be very visible, just given the amount of information that will be there. But if you give her a minute or 2, she can try and put it all on one, one for you.
Sure, you're here. Pardon me? Oh.
Okay. Through you, Madam Budget Chair, to the councillor, with regards to the various reserve funds that are being spoken to with regard to this motion. The councillor asked with regard to the city's civic project fund, and after the commitments during the multi-year budget, so 2024, 2025, and 2026, the estimated uncommitted balance of the civic project fund would be approximately $7 million. With regards to the tax rate stabilization reserve, the estimated balance after the commitments for the multi-year budget, 24, 25, and 2027, the estimated uncommitted balance is approximately $1.5 million. With regards to the special tax mitigation fund, with regards to the amounts that are in that reserve and those amounts that are committed through the budget and the transfer of approximately $1.8 million in gapping for 2023. The uncommitted balance would be 1.54, and this amendment that is before council this evening would deplete that special tax mitigation reserve.
Procedural question raised by Councillor Garcia that these 3 are in sense one motion. Could we have them moved as one motion later, and if somebody wants them separated in the usual fashion, they could be?
I guess just so I understand your question, right now there are 3 different motions.
Right.
And you're saying combine them into one motion to vote on?
Well, that's the impression I got, that they are very similar in intent, but if somebody wants them separated, then in the usual fashion they could.
So I think the CAO would like to speak to it, and then I can speak to the procedural side to that as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe I'll start, Evan, and you can challenge me if I'm mistaken. But it's my understanding what Councilor Garcia is requesting is that we have the discussion of all 3 taken place at the same time, and then we would then have the independent votes for each of the 3. So rather than treat them as 3 separate, we treat them all together, but we vote on them separately, but have all of the discussion and questions for all 3 of them taken together first before the votes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's clarification. Now, if I could continue with questions, we have the region coming in with their tax increase, and if we take what is being proposed and we combine it with ours, what's the average for the household?
Through you, Director.
Through you, Madam Budget Chair, I'll just take a moment because I want to pull the current estimate that I have with regards to that, okay?
Okay, if we're waiting for that, Mr. Mayor, Madam Chair, yeah, one of the concerns I have is the impact this has on rental rates, because if you look at the combined increase, if it exceeds a certain number, then the landlords can apply to waive the 2.5 increase and go to a higher increase. Could staff clarify the provincial requirement with respect to rent?
Is there someone on staff that can answer that question? Okay, we're just going to ask legal to answer that question.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, through the council member. For the landlords to be able to increase rent above the 2.5, I believe, whatever the percentage is that there has to be a special circumstance for the inflation or whatever outside forces to go above a certain level to trigger that.
Okay, and my understanding was that would be triggered if the tax increase were greater than a rate of inflation. So.
He's thinking.
I see the rationale behind your statement, but before I confirm that that is correct, I would have to look into it. And I can certainly get back to you on that one.
Okay, I'm confident that I'm somewhat correct. And the reason I'm asking to put all these figures up is we're putting this into perspective. And it's the perspective from the viewpoint of the city, but our residents also have a perspective. And they have uncertain expenditures. They need reserve monies. And with the increase last year of 10.5%, I would submit that their reserves are not comparable to what we have in the city. And therefore, I'll be supporting all three. And you can make the argument that the 10.5% is being compounded, and compounding is very important because that becomes the base. And these people will still be suffering from an increase of 10.5%. So if we get this down to zero, we're sending a signal that we care about them. We care about their reserves, their ability to finance their standard of living, because a lot of people are suffering now. We know they're suffering. We had all that negative feedback last time. So to me, this would be a very positive step for the residents of St. Catharines, and especially those that are renting, because there would be a double whammy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor with regards to the all-in tax increase estimated at this time before we consider any amendments before council. So based on the mayor's draft budget, the blended rate, which included the city's increase, the region increase for its general and special levies, and the education, it was estimated to be 4.03%.
That's for a one-year period, or that's for this year, and if you combine it for last year, what's the rate of inflation for this year?
The rate of inflation, through you to the councillor, the rate of inflation as of December 2022, the CPI was 6.8%.
Thank you.
Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to compliment staff and the mayor and our chair for the work they've done on this budget. It has been well, I don't know if it's been a labor of love or not, but it has been a labor, that's for sure. As was mentioned last year, we were at 10.5% at this time, and was, well, probably the highest increase ever. I don't know, I'd have to defer to Councillor Kushner about that. If we get to zero this year, well, it balances it out somewhat. We're talking about a one-year budget. We're not talking about 3 years when we're talking about 0%. We're talking about going to 0% this year, not necessarily next year or any other year after that, and that has to be clear. we can't forecast the future, so let's deal with this year. 0% is achievable without this is, to me, the most important aspect of this. It's achievable without canceling any programs or services. We can do it without withdrawing anything. We're talking about municipal taxes only, as the director just mentioned, and to go at 4% to me that's still too high. To get to a 0% increase, we must take money from the tax mitigation reserve, and thanks to gapping funds, that's going to be significant. But we're probably also going to have to go to the tax stabilization reserve to get some money out of that also, and I'll let Chair Garcia explain how and what amounts are going to be required for that. We're not going to deplete the tax stabilization reserve. There'll still be money in it. It was made clear to me that the tax stabilization reserve is basically a draw on one particular aspect of the budget. With that in mind, perhaps we could use those funds to maintain the forestry staff that we just talked about as a special project for this year. I don't know if that would fit. Just a suggestion. I'll let Christine work her magic on that. This is a year, in all my years on City Council, I never ever thought I'd approve a 0% tax increase because I thought our services or our programs would be withdrawn in some way. But that's not the case because of the high increase last year. And as in talking with Councillor Townsend last night, there are a lot of cities in Ontario this year that are facing pretty well the same increase this year. But if we can reduce our taxes to zero, then that's going to help that overall tax rate come down even more, below 4%. And I think that's the way we must go. Thank you. And again, thank you very much to staff for the job they've done.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. Just wanted to share a few numbers with my colleagues around the table. The City of London is looking at a near 20% property tax hike. That's going to be divided up in over 2 years. The City of Windsor is about 13% over the 2 years. The City of Cambridge, 15.5%. City of Guelph, over 3 years, 17%. Just a few numbers to put out there, just to say that we're the only municipality that is struggling to keep our tax rate down, which obviously we have a responsibility to do so. It comes with challenges. If you read some articles out now, you look at the provincial, federal downloading to municipalities and the extensive costs that continue to be downloaded, especially with provincial costs. And that comes from the property tax base. My question through you, Chair, to the mover, with regards to your 24 to 26, the gapping dollars, would that indicate that that we would not be hiring part-time employees? I know it says unfilled part-time jobs, but how do we get to that number if we've already predetermined how many unfilled part-time positions are going to exist?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Councillor Townsend, the part-time gapping for 2023, and that is as a result of unfilled part-time positions like students and so on, as we talked about earlier. The total was 688,000, and out of that, Mayor Sisko has already allocated 500,000 as part of his budget to get his reduction that he got. And I'm just proposing that we use the balance of the 188. That doesn't mean that the budget in 2025 and 2026 is also there for hiring those part-time employees, and hopefully we'll have better luck next year, but this should not affect our ability to hire them.
Thank you for that. Through you, Madam Chair, to, I guess, staff, what impact would this have on the part-time positions, and what type of part-time positions would this impact?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, this is part-time positions, which are our summer student positions, as well as other part-time positions that the city has at our various facilities and throughout the city.
Thank you for that. This is a tough one to support. For 2024 to 2026, we're going to have no potential students working for the municipality, which potentially shows no new growth of, training new people to work for the city. It's certainly concerning. My other question through you, Madam Chair, is in regards to the second portion of the motion. It's asking to use 1.5 million from the Special Tax Mitigation Fund, leaving that account with a zero balance. Does that mean for future years that account, that fund, that would stay at zero, or would that be replenished throughout the 2024 year?
Through you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Before I respond to that question, I just want to go back to the question with regards to the part-time and student positions and those gapping dollars. Those, the 688 is the anticipated gapping for 2023, and that we weren't able to fill those jobs. And they're, by moving forward with including the gapping dollars, there is a expectation that there will be some continued gapping in the future years, but it doesn't indicate that we won't have any summer students or part-time staff. It's just that we'll be at a similar rate to what we were in 2023. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor with regards to the second question with regards to the Special Tax Mitigation Fund. The Special Tax Mitigation Fund was created early in 2020, in mid-2023. Funds have been utilized through the mayor's proposed budget, and the intent of this reserve approved by council is that gapping dollars would, full-time gapping dollars would be attributed to that reserve during the year, and then staff would provide an update to council as part of the quarterly variance with regards to how staff was doing with allocating and recruiting for various full-time positions at the city.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair to the director. So to understand that special tax mitigation account would no longer exist if we were to use it to offset. Am I correct on that? It would just be, we would use that money and that would be gone.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the reserve would be empty. The reserve would stay there, and should there be future full-time gapping dollars, they could be allocated to that reserve.
Thank you for that. So we wouldn't have another 1.5 million, say, next budget year to put towards if we had a tax increase next year.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, yes, staff definitely do not, we definitely hope that there is not that level of vacancy. We are doing all that we can to recruit so that we reduce their full-time gapping that is occurring during the year.
Thank you. And one more question through you, Madam Chair, to Director Douglas. If council approves a 0% increase tonight by depleting the reserve, the special tax mitigation, using the gapping dollars, we have the civic project fund, which should be used for, civic projects. Could we be looking at potentially, 2025, 2026, a 6 to 7% increase in property taxes?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, if we don't have the dollars that are included in the budget to offset the tax levy reductions in the future years, then there is the potential to have more significant increases in 25 and 2026. With regards to the motions that you have before you, the two of the motions that the dollars potentially wouldn't be there, you'd be looking at almost 1.5% increase in 2025.
Thank you for that. My concern here, certainly you want to bring taxes down as the province and the federal government continue to download onto municipalities those costs. I know my colleagues around the table are aware of that. There's also increasing costs of the cost of inflation. I'm in favor and I will support the gapping dollars, but I'm concerned with depleting the reserves for future tax years. Because there is the fear of running into issues like Guelph, Windsor, London, Cambridge, who are staring down 6 to 7% per year tax increases. So I would caution my colleagues to deplete all your reserves this year and really consider using them for future tax years to offset the tax increase. I do think that Councillor Garcia brings forward a great solution with the gapping dollars to assist with this year, but it concerns me with completely depleting those the tax stabilization, and then again, because we still got 25, 26 that we'll be dealing with. So again, I'll be supporting the gap, but I can't stand and support the special depleting the other reserves, because I believe that we will probably need them for future years based on decisions that are coming down the line from the province and the feds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have questions, but I have some comments. I have very serious concerns about the amendments to use the reserve fund being brought forward to bring this year's property tax to a zero increase. As Councillor Townsend pointed out, municipalities across Ontario as well as across the country are looking at significant tax increases, and I'm a bit confused as to why we're fixating on a 0% tax increase, especially when the mayor's brought forward a budget that has a very reasonable increase, and even adding the forestry back in, and his budget that he's brought forward, it is a small increase despite the current rate of inflation of around 3%. I believe it is currently at. The increases in staffing cost, and the increases in the cost of everything, from paper clips to large engine parts. What is being suggested is exactly what happened at the region during the 2014-2018 term, when reserves were used to keep property taxes artificially low. And that's a part of the reason why we're seeing such large increases at the region. And I will harken back to a name that I never thought I'd actually use in council, but this kind of budgeting approach really reminds me of the Andy Petrowski style of budgeting, with short-term wins, but resulting in significant increases down the road. I've spoken with colleagues across the province and the country who've experienced the impacts of a 0% increase in budgets. And their advice to me was, don't do it. You will pay for it later. Our incredible budget team, who has worked incredibly hard, has shown very clearly in the breakdown of 2025 that these amendments will result in a larger tax increase. So make no mistake, we are, if we don't, go with the small increase now, we will be paying for it next year. I believe the number was 5.26 in 2025. So that's going to be the increase, or could be the increase, or we're going to have to look at service reductions. I'm new. I will always use that line for as long as I possibly can. But when I was when Director Douglas and the budget team were explaining to me what reserves are for, they're there to help us manage risk. They're there when the unexpected happens, and they are there to help us to ensure our city's long-term financial sustainability. As a city, we weathered the impacts of COVID because we had robust reserves. We know that an MPAC reassessment is going to happen. It's not a surprise. It's not a surprise like COVID. And we need to be prepared for those increases in property values that are going to have a huge impact on many of our residents. So just to be clear, we're working currently with property assessments, and Director Douglas, please correct me if I'm incorrect, but we're working on property assessment values from 2016. I think we can all agree that much has changed since 2016, and that those reassessments are not going to come in at a 2016 evaluation. And there are many, many, many people in our community who are going to need help to offset those reassessment increases. So if we don't have the robust reserve funds to offset what we know is going to happen, we are doing a huge disservice to our residents. Our duty as councilors is not to just look at short-term gains. We have an obligation to think 5, 10, 20, 30 years ahead and consider that the impact that our decisions are going to have not only on today's residents, but on future residents, our children, our grandchildren, even great-grandchildren. We need to be leaders who will help run a multi-million-dollar corporation that is innovative, efficient, progressive, and makes decisions that aren't just about short-term gain, but are about ensuring the financial sustainability of our city, and probably most importantly, to ensure that our city can provide the services and programs our residents expect, and to make sure that our city is affordable for all. I appreciate the gapping dollars, and I'm happy to support that, but there is absolutely no way I can support using the reserves because the impacts on our future budgets are just too great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. At this time, the solicitor, I think he has an answer to Councillor Kushner's question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. I did have a chance to look up the legislation. The Residential Tenancies Act states that the landlords can apply for a rent increase that is above guideline if municipal taxes and charges have increased by an extraordinary amount, and extraordinary is defined as the guideline plus 50% of the guideline. So if for sake of the example, if it's 2.5%, 50% of that is 1.25%. So if the tax increase goes above 3.75%, the landlord can apply for a rent increase that is above guideline. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with some of the councillors around the table here. This 0%, I pulled some numbers up today, and I mean, you can double check them, and I might be wrong. From Niagara Falls, 4 or 5 years ago, they had a 0% increase. Following year, 3.5, 1.7, 3.9, 7.9, and now they're asking for 6.2 this year. So you can see how zero, you have to play catch up in years to follow. So a 0% is, it's ridiculous, actually, in my opinion. Things do go up to a minimum. The mayor's budget came in very well, even adding the tree base to it. And with the First Amendment there is very good. To take all your money out of the tax fund and close it up and be a zero with, we know what's upcoming from the region for property assessment, to have no money left in your bank account to cover something like that, I think that's just irresponsible. And I have a quote there from Municipal World. That's an organization. We all get emails from them, and they have a magazine. And it said, to have 0% when there is inflation means a reduction in services or deferrals of major capital works. Therefore, there has to be a large increase in the future just to play catch up. And I agree with that. I mean, that was a quote from 2018 in their magazine, just to show you back then, and it proves that it's right. So I like the mayor's thing, and with a few of the adjustments, and that's where I'll be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Miller?
Yeah, I had a question for the director. How, if we know this, going back, how often have our budgets been above that 3.75 number from the landlord-tenant regulation about it increasing above guideline?
Director Douglas.
Thank you to the councillor. We do track this information, but just give me a moment. I just need to do a quick scan. in the past 10 years, over that, the tax levy has increased. In 2019, it's 4.05, and in 2016, it was 4.85. And in 14. Now, the impact, the actual tax increase on the median home, for those looking back in the same time frame, it was 2016, it was 4.97, but all other years were under that guidance.
So it's happened a handful of times. Do we know, and certainly the more concern this council has for rental rates, the better, in my opinion. We know it's in a crisis right now, but do we have any idea, I guess, because we're not really directly involved, how often those years that landlords did apply for that, or we just wouldn't be given that info?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, I would have to look and see what information we have on that. That's not something I have readily available this evening for you.
Yeah, I just, you know, I hate to make any assumptions, but I think if this has never come up before, I'm not sure it should be a top of mind consideration right now. And frankly, the horse left the barn in terms of rental rates a long time ago in terms of the city and what people are paying right now. It's already outrageous and unaffordable. The thing I agree with Councillor McPherson. This is just, in my opinion, just kicking the can down the road. And we'll just see a bigger increase next year because these operating costs aren't going to change. And we'll be out of reserves, as Councillor Townsend noted. So I don't really see the value in the pat on the back we can give ourselves for hitting some arbitrary 0% number, just so we can look next year and have it be 8% or something like that to make up for these costs. We had a long conversation about this in the summer, and some of us expressed a lot of frustration at this desire to lower taxes without a reciprocal reduction in the budget from those who were pushing the 0%. It's been 6 or 7 months since then. We still haven't seen any proposals to significantly reduce our budget, except for the mayor's around forestry, which was unanimously defeated tonight. I think we have to get better at having an honest conversation with citizens about the pressures we're under. And Councillor Townsend's noted that, Councillor McPherson's noted it as well. Just being able to say we reduced it to 0 because we picked 0 as a nice number out of the sky, I don't think is sufficient. It's an easy decision. I get it. I get why it's appealing to some people. But we saw it at the region, and Councillor McPherson's 100% correct that they picked this arbitrary number for years, and then now we're paying the price for it, literally. And these reserves are not meant for operating costs. They're meant to guard against risk, and for those situations like global pandemics when we need them, not so we can say we're at 0% instead of 2% or 3% or 4%. So not in favor of kicking the can down the road on this. I think we're here to make difficult decisions and to have difficult conversations with residents about the financial straits that this city and all municipalities in Ontario and frankly Canada are in. So I am going to vote against this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Williamson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not, as Deputy Mayor Phillips said, I'm also not a 0 person. And this isn't really, I don't think, a politically motivated budget. If it was politically motivated, be doing it the year before the next election. I think what this is a response, an atonement for a 10.5% increase that happened last year. So if you balance it out, we're going to give over 2 years, it's a 5.25% increase. And leadership can be sometimes saying, you know what, enough is enough. We had the 10.5, we got the feedback, there was a lot of people who were hurt, and a lot of people struggle with affordability on the property taxes and some other fees. So I'm going to support all 3 in this case, strictly based on being financially responsible after, like I said, to try and be responsible after what happened last year and what we heard from a lot of people. And it's still effectively not going to be zero because of the regional increase that has already been passed or about to be passed. So I will support it in context with what's gone on last year and looking at how people responded to it. We have an obligation to listen to the citizens in our city, and we heard loud and clear from them. We have a moral obligation to keep things at a reasonable rate. So averaging it out over 2 years, you're looking at 2 5.25% increases. And to me, this is the best choice that we have and shows leadership and being financially responsible.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair, I just have maybe 3 comments. Not to repeat anything that some of my colleagues have said about impact reassessments and using reserves to pay for operating costs. You know, a business that depletes its savings to pay for their employees goes out of business the next year because they don't have any more money to pay for their employees. A city that does it just raises taxes the next year because they should have done it the year before. This isn't, you know, if we want to atone for past sins, this isn't doing that because we're not being honest with taxpayers. This isn't a decrease. This is just kicking the can down the road. The other comment that I wanted to make was, it had to do with this idea that gapping funds can be used to lower the tax rate, or seeing gapping funds as kind of a slush fund that we can use to make ourselves look good. Gapping funds to me indicate there's a problem, right? Like those funds exist because we can't hire staff. Rather than asking rather than getting excited and asking how can we spend this money, we should be asking how can we fix this problem? How can we make sure that we retain staff? How do we make sure that we can actually get the staff we need to deliver the services? Because when there aren't staff to do the job, services decrease. So every gapping dollar that we get that we're happy to spend is just an indication that services aren't where they should be because we don't have the staff to do them. So, I mean, that's kind of that conversation that I'd rather have than asking how to spend the money. I'd rather have the conversation, how do we hire those staff and make sure that we don't have these gapping dollars next year. And if we do this and we don't have those gapping dollars next year, then we will be raising taxes. And one of the reserves will be completely depleted. So we will be raising taxes next year. Yeah, those are just my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kushner.
Clarification, we're talking about depleting funds. We forgot about the hydro dividends. They're very generous. Pardon? They're very generous, and normally they're put into the civic fund. The civic fund has what, 7 million in it? Pardon?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the hydro dividends are actually included in the city's budget as a non-tax revenue amount. If there is an amount that does come in over the amount that we have budgeted, we do have the hydro policy where we transfer them to the hydro reserve, and then we also transfer a portion to the tax rate stabilization reserve, and the usage of the amounts for the hydro policy are for green initiatives. So those amounts, so the civic project fund, funding sources for it currently are if we sell property, tax sale revenues go in there, as well as there's some interest income that goes to that reserve fund.
And you're saying none of the dividends go into the civic fund?
Through you, Madam Chair, no.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Oops, Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for all the comments. I have some comments I want to make, but first I just wanted to clarify some items because I think we're getting into some wrong information here. First of all, the question of students. we're not doing anything that will in any way keep us from hiring students next year. The only thing that kept us from hiring students is the fact that we couldn't find them. So hopefully we can find them in 2024. Understand that the gapping that we were talking about for part-time, the 688, that was just for part-time positions. In addition, there was $1.8 million in full-time positions that weren't filled. And that is part of the special tax mitigation fund, because that is a motion that we approved. But last but not least, understand that the mayor's budget already uses some of the tax mitigation fund to come down to where he was at for 24, 25, and 26. And that isn't being touched. Like, all that I was asking for is what was left of that to try to reduce the impact. But let me talk about some of the comments that were made. So I normally don't like to read my comments, but this is a most important amendment, and I don't want to miss any critical points. So some of these points have already been made by my colleagues, but I believe they need to be emphasized. First, I acknowledge that Mayor Cisco tried very hard and did a great job reducing spending. However, I believe strongly that we need to do more, and we need to make up for other amendments that increase spending from what the mayor tabled, like the Forestry amendment, which we have approved, which changes the budget by $465,000 in 2024. Our need to do more is driven by the fact that in 2023, Council approved a 10.5% increase in property taxes. That was the largest in the city's history. And this, as we heard from so many people, caused significant hardship to many taxpayers, particularly seniors and others on fixed incomes. And I know Councilor Townsend mentioned some of the high increases in other municipalities, but that's because we've already done ours. They're looking at doing their 10.5 now. We've done that, and it was really hard on people. So because of this, I believe it is critical to minimize any increase in 2024 because of that compounding effect that Councilor Kushner mentioned that it will have on top of the 10.5% in 2023. So a 3.5% increase, for example, is really a 14% increase over 2022. And if you're paying taxes on a fixed income, a 14% increase over 2 years is very significant. So, for example, if you were paying $4,000 in taxes, and there are lots of people that pay that, you're talking about $560 more. I mean, it moves very fast. Now, in addition to the impact on taxpayers, any increase, and we discussed this a little bit, over 2023 could really further impact our renters who are already struggling with very high rents, as we keep hearing. This is because, as some speakers have previously highlighted, and our city solicitor confirmed, provincial rent controls set increases at 2.5%. And back to Councilor Miller's point, that is right now. It hasn't necessarily been 2.5 for a long time, but right now that's applicable. But again, if taxes increase more than 50% over that, or 3.75%, the province legislation considers this an extraordinary tax increase, and then landlords can apply for any increase and are not bound by the 2.5% limit. Of course, that increase has to be approved, but if they have a good rationale in terms of renovations they have made or other costs, they're very likely to get a large tax or rent increase. Since the region has already set their 2024 increase at 7.02%, any increase we approve in 2024 is likely to breach that 3.75 critical limit in the blended tax bill that we send out. I checked with Director Douglas earlier, and if we commit at zero with the 7.02% that the region has, we may come in at 3.3 blended, so we would manage not to hurt the renters. So my amendment is designed to keep total net city spending in 2024 at the 2023 level, but please note that it accomplishes this without reducing city services and without forcing reductions on the budgets that the PAC and the library submitted that they believe were necessary. And that's important when we talk about kicking the can down the road. We're not reducing anything. We're using a reserve that we set up, both of them, that were set up for this purpose. So my amendment to reduce spending, as are up there, includes using the extra $188,000 for part-time gapping, which are unfilled part-time positions, and the mayor already used 500 of that, so there's 188 left. Then using the $1,541,000 uncommitted balance in the special tax mitigation fund, which, if you remember, council set up specifically for this purpose. In other words, to mitigate these tax increases. So, and then using about $250,000 from the tax rate stabilization reserve to bring the increase to zero. And note that this is after assuming that the amendments that we already looked at, that we approved, like keeping the forestry in-house and Councilor McPherson's reduction of fees, we would only need $250,000 from that tax rate stabilization reserve to bring it to zero. And I think as the name implies, this is exactly, in my opinion, what this reserve is for. It has a significant uncommitted balance way above that $250,000. And my amendment is only to reduce 2024 to zero to mitigate that very large 2023 tax increase. In 2025 and 2026, there will likely still be increases higher than zero in the city's portion due to inflation and contractual obligations. And of course, what the mayor proposed in terms of reductions that he had in future years will still be there, that we haven't changed with amendments. So finally, I just want to address staff's concerns in the memo they sent to council that you probably all read. So first, they said that the tax rate stabilization reserve should only be accessed for extraordinary events, for example. Well, definitely, in my opinion, the 10.5% increase in 2023 was indeed an extraordinary event, the highest increase in the city's history. Secondly, they imply that my amendment, and we have discussed this, could create a hole in the 2025 budget and lead to a higher tax increase than in the mayor's budget. First, the mayor's budget for 25 and 2026 did not use or rely on the funds I am proposing to use in 2024. The funds that he proposed to use to bring his increases in 25 and 26 where they came in are still there. Secondly, even if not as large as this year, 2023, we're still very likely to have hiring gapping dollars in 2024 and 2025, and also a budget surplus at the end of the year. Both of these we typically have every year. And we have a budget surplus typically because the way we're budgeting, which I will like to change, is we budget to budget as opposed to budgeting to actual spending. So gapping dollars are not there only because the market is soft, in my opinion, or because COVID or other reasons, but also because, in my opinion, it's more difficult to hire staff to work in a municipality as opposed to in the private sector. So I believe we will always have some gapping dollars. So in summary, I don't believe we're kicking the can down the road. This is a one-time thing to help our taxpayers and renters. And I believe my amendment is appropriate to address the severe impact of that extraordinary tax increase in 2023 without affecting services. So I urge my colleagues to support it unanimously. Our taxpayers and renters need help and deserve no less. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Garcia. I see Councilor McPherson. Is it a question of clarification? Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for a point of clarification, Director Douglas, the motions that are being proposed with the use of the reserve funds, are they keeping spending at zero, or are they just keeping the levy at zero? I want to make sure that everyone understands that there seems to be a difference between the two.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the amendment on the screen being proposed is adjusting the net expenditures, which is also known as the net tax levy, to be equal to 2023.
Okay, so it's just sorry, I'm just trying to get this. So spending is going to remain the same, like the amount that the city needs to spend to keep us running and doing all the things that we do, that's going to remain the same. We're just artificially, like we're keeping it, we're reducing it, but not reducing our spending. Like we're not making any hard decisions about cutting, making cuts or reducing our costs. Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify it in my head.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, these amendments are actually increasing non-tax revenues. So our expenditures aren't being changed by this. What we're changing is our non-tax revenues, which means the net tax levy that we need, it's reducing the amount of the net tax levy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Moving forward, Councillor Phillips, are you seconding all three motions? Yes. Thank you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to vote on the three motions, Amendment 1, then Amendment 2, and once we do that, we're going to take a short recess so that our staff can break down some numbers, and then we'll come back and vote on the third amendment.
I'm just getting the voting mode activated now. And so this is the vote on the first amendment from Councillor Garcia, which is regarding the part-time employment gapping dollars. So on this amendment only, Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff,
Yes.
Councillor Stevens,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Dodge.
Yes.
And that's carried. So this is the vote now on the second amendment from Chair Garcia, which is the use of the Special Tax Mitigation Fund. Chair Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
No.
Councillor McPherson,
No.
Councillor Lindell,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
No.
Councillor Dodge, sorry, no, that's later. Councillor Ratzlaff,
No.
Councillor Stevens,
No.
Councillor Townsend,
No.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Dodge.
Yes.
And that's lost on a tie. 6-6. I guess we'll look to the treasurer to confirm. Should we take a break now to calculate the numbers now for the third amendment?
We're just going to take a few minutes for a break. Oh, can I get a mover and a seconder for a recess? Councillor Kushner, Councillor McPherson. Thank you, Council. So now we're on 11.7, and the Director will bring us with some more information.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. With regards to this, the next amendment, it's looking at utilizing dollars from the tax rate stabilization reserve. So when we look at the available balance in the tax rate stabilization reserve, there was a balance of $3 million, but there are commitments in the 2024, 2025, and 2026 multi-year budgets, and therefore the available balance is $1.52 million. So therefore, the amendment that you will see on this screen is to utilize that available balance in order to reduce the 2023 to the 2024 net tax levy is close to 0% as possible using the available balance.
Councillor Garcia, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just through you to Director Douglas, would you please share with Council where the funding comes from for the tax stabilization reserve?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Councillor, the funding for the tax rate stabilization reserve comes from the prior year surplus and a portion of excess hydro dividends, should there be any.
Okay, so the reason I asked that for clarification is even if we're now saying that we would try to use what's left that's uncommitted, but the likelihood is that there will be other funding going into that as long as we have some budget surpluses. So.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Councillor, that is correct that there are year-end surpluses that go into the tax rate stabilization reserve, but one of the main sources of the city's surplus is through gapping dollars, and we have allocated those to the other special tax mitigation reserve. So I just want to make Council aware of that as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question through you to the Director of Finance. I'm wondering if you could just maybe highlight some of those that earmarked projects, and if you can't, you can. I'm just kind of curious, maybe to remind Council as to what those projects that we're using this fund towards.
Through you, Councillor, or through you, Madam Chair, to the Councillor, the utilization of reserves is appendix in the budget document. It's appendix number 2, and it does list the various items. If you give me a moment, I can pull it to name some of those projects.
Thank you. I'll give you a second. I do have a follow-up question on that too. The current tax rate stabilization reserve, we currently have 1.5 million in it. This 1.5, and correct me if I'm wrong, has come from the last 3 years. Is that correct? For the last 3 years of surpluses, hydro dividends? Like it's taken us 3 years to save this up, no? 2 or 3?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Councillor, it has taken us a number of years to get to this surplus level, because there is always amounts needed, and especially, unforeseen items like we had last January was one of the ways that this tax rate stabilization reserve could be utilized to support unforeseen and unanticipated events.
Thank you. And I've got my answer that I need. I won't be supporting this. I believe that these funds will be needed for future years. We are going to be looking at an increase next year, as my colleagues around the table know, of some of the provincial downloading that is coming our way. So we'll not be supporting this, and I encourage my colleagues not to as well. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, is this for clarification?
Oh, no, we can't ask any more questions or anything, can we?
No. Does anyone else have any clarification questions? If not, then we're going to go to the vote. I'll ask Deputy Clerk to call the roll.
Just waiting for the voting mode to enter here, and then we'll vote on the amended motion that is on the screen. Chair Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
No.
Councillor Stevens.
No.
Councillor Townsend.
No.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
No.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
No.
Councillor McPherson.
No.
Councillor Miller.
No.
And Vice Chair Dodge.
Yes.
And that's lost.
Thank you. I'll be now asking Councillor Garcia, Chair Garcia to come back to the chair, and I'll leave it to him.
Thank you, everyone, for contributing to that discussion. So we will move to number 12, a call for notice of motion, any notices of motion to amend the budgets at the meeting of January 31st, 2024. Are there any notices of motion to amend the budgets at the meeting of January 31st? As a reminder to councilors, amendments, as I said early on at the meeting, are due to staff by 4 p.m. this Wednesday, January 24th, in order to be considered on January 31st. If no amendments are submitted for the meeting on January 31st, that meeting will be canceled. Of course, you don't have to, if you're thinking of something, you don't have to submit it now. You have until Wednesday. So anything right now? No, seeing none. So I will move to 13, requests for information about the budgets and budget-related report requests. And is this what Councilor Harris had? Yeah, the red. Right. Okay. So we have two on the screen. We have Councilor Dodge, and we have something from Councilor Phillips. Did you, either one of you, want to elaborate, or no? Okay, I think it's clear. So, okay, we need a mover and a, sorry, Councilor Miller?
Just clarification on the second one. Isn't that already part of the mandate of that review? Like, was this not in their purview?
So this would be to ask that that task force also look at adding an additional $2,000 honorarium to the chair of the BSC.
Okay.
So they're already looking at council remuneration, and they'd say in addition to that, can also look at that additional request for the honorarium for the chair.
Okay. Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay, I will ask for two separate votes because I don't want to vote on the second one. So on Councilor Dodge's report request, all in favor? Oh, sorry, mover and a seconder. Councilor Kushner, Councilor Miller, sorry. Sorry, Councilor Dodge was moving it, so Councilor Kushner, seconder. And then the second one from Councilor Phillips. Do you have a seconder? Councilor Miller, okay. So we will move to 13.1, enhanced waste and litter control. And I will look to Councilor Dodge for her report request here. That's a separate one, right?
No, that's already done. That was the first one.
Sorry, that's the one we just did.
Yeah,
My
you-
apologies.
you were going to-
Okay, I'm on the wrong page here. Okay, so, yeah, okay. Okay, so we looked at the report request, and 14 is closed session. There is no closed session, so no motions arising from closed session. So number 16 is the bylaw, that the bylaw listed on the council budget agenda be read a first time, considered and passed. A bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on its council budget meeting held on the 22nd day of January 2024. One reading with respect to confirming the proceedings of the meeting held on January 22nd, 2024, that it be signed and executed by the chair and the deputy clerk. Can I have a councilor move the motion? Councilor Dodge, Councilor Townsend, all in favor? That's carried. So adjournment, 17, that there being no further items of business, this meeting be adjourned. Can I have a, Councilor Harris is making that motion. Councilor Stevens, all in favor? Okay. Finished.